It's wonderful to see you all again. I've got an extraordinary tale to tell you today.
Give me the master code, Bella Miller demanded, her hand outstretched toward the tablet in her sister's grip. You don't need to be hovering while I'm trying to visualize my launch party anyway. Lucy stood in the center of the $14 million living room, her fingers tightening around the edge of the device. The scent of fresh, expensive lilies she had meticulously arranged only an hour ago was already being suffocated by the heavy, synthetic vanilla of her sister's perfume. She looked at the woman standing before her. Bella was draped in a silk wrap that Lucy recognized from her own closet, paired with oversized sunglasses that hid eyes already scanning the room for the best content angles. This isn't a playground, Bella, Lucy said, her voice a practiced anchor of calm. I'm under contract. The owner is extremely private. If a single coaster is out of place, it's my reputation on the line. Reputation? Bella let out a sharp, jagged laugh that grated against the pristine acoustic tiles of the vaulted ceiling. She stepped forward, her designer heels, the ones she'd borrowed and never returned, clicking aggressively on the white oak floors. You're a stager, Lucy. You move sofas for a living. I'm an influencer with 300,000 followers who need to see me living the life they dream of. This house is the perfect backdrop for my new beginnings reel. It's basically mine for the night. She didn't wait for an answer. She lunged for the tablet Lucy held, her movements frantic and entitled. Lucy stepped back, a flicker of heat rising in her chest, but before she could speak, her phone buzzed in her pocket. The caller ID made her stomach drop. Elena Miller, their mother. Lucy answered, and the theatrics began before she could even say hello. Lucy? Oh, Lucy, my chest feels so tight. I think my blood pressure is spiking again. I can hear it in my ears. Mom, did you take your medication? Lucy asked, though she already knew the script by heart. I'm trying, but I'm so worried about your sister. Elena's voice was a fragile reed, trembling with manufactured desperation. She told me you're being so difficult about that big empty house. It's just for one night, Lucy. Why must you always be the one to cause friction? Family is all we have. If I end up in the hospital tonight because of this stress, I don't know how I'll forgive myself. Lucy looked at Bella, who was now smirking, watching her sister crumble under the weight of their mother's well-rehearsed guilt. This was the cycle. Bella demanded the impossible, Elena faked a medical crisis to enforce it, and Lucy was expected to set her professional life on fire just to keep them warm. She wants to throw a party, Mom, Lucy whispered, looking at the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the canyon. There are insurance liabilities, security protocols. Mr. Henderson, the property manager, is a shark. If he finds out I let unauthorized people in, then don't let him find out. Elena snapped, the fragility momentarily replaced by a sharp, demanding tone before she caught herself and returned to a whimper. Please, Lucy, for me, just give her the code. Let her have this one win. She's had such a hard month with her engagement numbers. Lucy ended the call. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the hum of the high-end climate control system. She looked at the room, the velvet chairs she'd spent weeks sourcing, the hand-knotted rugs, the delicate crystal. It was her masterpiece, the project that was supposed to launch her into the elite circles of international staging. Bella took a step closer, her eyes gleaming with the predatory light of someone who had never known the word no. You heard her. Don't be the reason Mom has another episode. Give me the master code, Lucy, now, or I'll tell her you hung up on her. Lucy felt the weight of the tablet in her hand. On the screen was the private contact information for Mr. Henderson and the owner's legal team. She thought about the years she had spent being the responsible one, the one who paid for Elena's treatments and Bella's investments. She thought about the wine stain Bella had left on her favorite rug 3 years ago, laughed off as a little accident. A strange, cold clarity washed over her. It was the feeling of a tectonic plate finally snapping into place. Fine, Lucy said, her voice devoid of its usual warmth. Finally, Bella huffed, snatching the tablet from her sister's hand. Was that so hard? Honestly, you act like you own the place. Go home, Lucy. You look exhausted, and frankly, you're ruining the aesthetic of my shot." Bella turned her back, already pulling her phone out to start a live stream. "Hey guys, I'm finally in my new place. It's even better than the photos. Look at this view." Lucy watched her sister for a long moment. She saw Bella toss her cheap, beaded handbag onto a $5,000 silk cushion. She watched her drag a heavy marble side table across the floor, the legs groaning against the wood Lucy had spent hours polishing. Lucy didn't argue. She didn't warn her about the silent alarms or the weight-sensitive sensors in the gallery. She simply reached into her own bag and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. She made a single notation, then turned and walked toward the heavy glass front door. As she stepped out into the cool evening air, she pulled out her phone. She didn't call her mother. Instead, she dialed a number she had saved under a simple, unassuming name. "Mr. Henderson." Lucy said, her voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. "I've finished the final walkthrough for the staging. However, I'm concerned about a potential security breach at the property. Yes, a trespasser. I think you should send the titanium shield team over tonight. Around 10 should be perfect. They'll want to catch them in the act." She hung up and walked toward her SUV, the sound of her own steady footsteps a rhythmic promise. Bella wanted a show for her followers. Lucy was going to make sure she got one she'd never forget. 3 hours after leaving the gallery, Lucy sat at the scarred wooden kitchen table, watching her sister systematically dismantle a piece of garlic bread with the same aggression she used on people's lives. The air in the Miller house was thick with the scent of Alina's overseasoned pot roast, and the heavy floral perfume Bella had sprayed liberally before sitting down. "I need your SUV tonight, Lucy," Bella said, her voice flat, not once looking up from the screen of her phone. The rhythmic asterisk clack-clack of her long, acrylic nails against the glass was the only sound in the room for a long beat. "My followers expect a certain aesthetic for the launch tonight, and my sedan has a door ding that screams middle class. It'll ruin the vibe of the arrival video." Lucy took a slow sip of her water, feeling the cold condensation against her palm. She didn't blink. "I have work early tomorrow, Bella. I need my car." "Work?" Bella finally looked up, her lip curling in a practiced sneer. "You move furniture for rich people. I'm building an empire. I have 6,000 people waiting for my Midnight Mansion live stream. Do you have any idea what that kind of engagement is worth?" "It's not your mansion, Bella," Lucy said quietly. "It's a collaboration," Bella snapped, her eyes flashing with a familiar, dangerous entitlement. "The universe put that house in my path today. I'm just claiming what's mine. Besides, who's going to know? The owners are in Europe, and the stager is a spineless little mouse who was too scared to even look me in the eye." Lucy felt a ghost of a smile tug at the corner of her mouth, but she buried it behind her glass. "Oh, Lucy, don't be difficult," Alina chimed in, reaching over to pat Bella's hand. The mother's face suddenly contorted into a mask of theatrical pain, her hand fluttering toward her chest. "My heart has been doing that skipping thing again all afternoon. The stress of you girls bickering is just too much for me." If Bella's big career moment fails because she didn't have a nice car, I don't think my nerves could take the disappointment. It was the same script they had performed for a decade. Bella demanded, Alina enabled with a fake medical crisis, and Lucy was expected to dissolve. "The keys are on the counter," Lucy said, her voice devoid of emotion. Bella didn't say thank you. She simply stood up, grabbed the ring of keys, and tossed a crumpled napkin onto her half-eaten plate. "Smart choice. Maybe I'll tag your little staging business in a post one day. You know, as a charity case." Lucy watched her sister sweep out of the room, the smell of that cloying perfume lingering like a stain. She waited until she heard the heavy rumble of her SUV backing out of the driveway before she pulled her own phone from her pocket. A single message sat on the screen from an unsaved number. "Titanium shield lead. Team in position. Perimeter silent. Alarms set to silent alert mode. We are ready for your signal." Lucy's fingers were steady as she typed back. "Target is en route. Expected arrival 21:45. Proceed with full tactical containment once the live stream begins. I want the world to see the security breach in high definition. What are you doing on that phone, dear? Alina asked. Her heart condition miraculously vanished as she reached for the last piece of bread. You should be happy for your sister. She's going to be famous tonight. I know she is, Mom, Lucy said, standing up and clearing her plate with meticulous care. The sound of the ceramic hitting the sink was sharp, like a gavel. Tonight is going to be the most watched moment of her entire life. She walked to the window, looking out at the empty driveway. In the distance, the city lights flickered, oblivious to the storm she had just unleashed. Bella thought she was walking into her kingdom. She didn't realize she was driving a GPS-tracked cage straight into a den of professional hunters. Lucy checked her watch. 9:15 p.m. The countdown had begun. In 30 minutes, Bella would break the seal on the gallery door. In 40 minutes, she would go live to her thousands of followers. And in 41 minutes, Mr. Henderson's private security team would show the world exactly what happened to people who mistook Lucy Miller's silence for weakness. The following morning, the Miller household was vibrating with a frantic, ugly energy. Lucy Miller stood in the doorway of the kitchen, her coffee mug warming her palms as she watched the whirlwind of chaos that was her sister. The scent of burnt toast and expensive, cloying hairspray hung heavy in the air, a sensory reminder of Bella's presence. Bella was hunched over her laptop, her fingers flying across the keys with a manic intensity. Her hair was a mess of unbrushed extensions, and her eyes were rimmed with the red fatigue of someone who had spent the entire night refreshing her engagement metrics. "It's happening, Mom," Bella shrieked, ignoring Lucy entirely. "The gallery stunt worked. I've got an invite. An actual honest-to-God invite from Milan Elite Management. They want me for a special activation during Fashion Week." Alina hovered behind her, massaging Bella's shoulders with a look of doting adoration that she had never once directed toward her older daughter. "I knew it," Alina cooed. "I knew they'd see your potential. My talented girl." Lucy took a slow, deliberate sip of her coffee. The invite was a masterpiece of professional deception, drafted by Mr. Henderson's legal team and sent from a domain that looked impeccably authentic to someone blinded by their own vanity. It was the bait, wrapped in gold foil and smelling of Italian leather. "Milan is expensive, Bella," Lucy said, her voice a flat line of calm in the middle of their hysteria. "How are you planning to fund a last-minute trip like that?" Bella spun around in her chair, her lip curling with the familiar sneer of a woman who viewed everyone else as a rung on her ladder. "God, you're so small-minded, Lucy. This is an investment. And since you're the one with the steady, boring little job and no life, you're going to lend me the $5,000 for the flight and the hotel. Business class, obviously. I can't show up looking like a peasant." "I don't have $5,000 to give you, Bella," Lucy replied, her thumb tracing the rim of her mug. "Don't lie to me." Bella slammed her hand onto the marble countertop, the vibration making the silverware rattle. "I saw your bank statement on the counter last month. You have plenty. Besides, Mom said you'd help. Right, Mom?" Alina looked up, her expression shifting into that practiced mask of disappointment that usually preceded a fake heart palpitation. "Lucy, really, don't be selfish. Your sister is on the verge of greatness. Once she signs with this Milan firm, she'll pay you back tenfold. Think of the family." "The family," Lucy repeated, the words tasting like ash. "Is that why Bella used my key to break into Mr. Henderson's gallery last night? To help the family?" The room went deathly silent. Bella's face didn't pale. It hardened into a mask of indignant rage. "I didn't break in. I let myself in to create content that benefits everyone. And you should be grateful I used your name. It's the only time Lucy Miller will ever be associated with high art." Lucy didn't argue. She didn't need to. 2 hours later, she was sitting in a climate-controlled office that smelled of sterile mint and old money. Mr. Henderson sat across from her, his face a landscape of grim professionalism. Beside him stood the titanium shield lead, a man whose very posture suggested he was composed entirely of iron and tactical intent. "The footage is conclusive," the titanium shield lead said, tapping a tablet screen. On the high-definition display, Bella was clearly visible, laughing as she draped a cheap polyester scarf over a $3 million sculpture for a selfie. She bypassed the primary sensors using your credentials, but she didn't realize the secondary silent alarms were already active. We have her from 6 different angles, Lucy. And the contract? Lucy asked, her voice cold. Mr. Henderson slid a thick, cream-colored folder across the obsidian desk. It's ready. It looks like a standard talent representation agreement for the Milan activation. In reality, it's a voluntary admission of unauthorized entry and a waiver of all digital privacy rights. The moment she signs this to secure her spot in Milan, she hands us the keys to every device she owns, including the original, unedited footage of her theft. She'll sign it, Lucy said, her eyes fixed on the document. She's so desperate for the world to see her as a star that she won't even read the fine print. She's already demanding travel expenses from you, isn't she? Mr. Henderson asked, his eyes narrowing. She thinks I'm her ATM, Lucy replied. She thinks I'm the weak one who will always fold because family comes first. She's about to learn that family is a two-way street, the titanium shield lead muttered, his hand resting near the radio on his belt. Lucy left the office with the folder tucked under her arm. When she returned home, the atmosphere had escalated. Bella was throwing clothes into a suitcase, while Alina was on the phone, presumably bragging to an aunt about Bella's international career. Here, Lucy said, tossing the folder onto Bella's bed. Bella stopped, her eyes lighting up with predatory greed. Is this the money? It's better. It's the official contract from the Milan agency. They sent a courier to my office because they couldn't reach you. They need it signed and scanned back within the hour, or they're giving your spot to a girl from Paris. Bella snatched the folder, her breath coming in shallow hitches. She didn't even look at the clauses. She didn't notice the section titled Liability and Disclosure of Criminal Activity. She only saw the word Milan and the promised global exposure. See, Bella sneered, grabbing a pen from her nightstand. I told you I was special. I told you I'd leave this pathetic house behind. She scrawled her signature with a flourish, the ink wet and heavy on the page. She handed it back to Lucy with a look of pure, unadulterated triumph. Scan it, send it, and then get out of my room. I have to decide which of your designer bags I'm taking with me. Consider it a rental fee for the flight money you're about to give me. Lucy took the paper, her fingers brushing the signature. She felt the weight of the trap closing, the silent click of the lock. Bella was smiling, already imagining the flashbulbs and the fame, oblivious to the fact that she had just signed her own professional death warrant. I'll make sure this gets exactly where it needs to go, Lucy said, her voice a whisper of icy promise. She walked out of the room, leaving her sister to pack for a trip that would never happen. Lucy checked her watch. 48 hours until the departure. 48 hours until the world saw the unedited version of Bella Miller. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, her phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Henderson, signature received. The hunters are ready. 48 hours to impact. Lucy didn't smile. She simply went to the kitchen and began to wash her coffee mug, the sound of the water drowning out Bella's high-pitched, entitled laughter from upstairs. The countdown had moved from minutes to hours, and the bait had been swallowed whole. The day before the scheduled departure, the Miller household was a battlefield of tulle, sequins, and unearned ego. Bella Miller stood in the center of the foyer, surrounded by 5 open suitcases that looked more like open wounds, spilling expensive silks and designer labels across the hardwood floor. The air was thick with the scent of her favorite $400 perfume, a heavy, suffocating jasmine that always made Lucy's throat tight. Lucy, where is my steamer? Bella snapped, not bothering to look up from her phone. She was frantically typing, likely updating her followers on her upcoming international tour. I told you I needed everything prepped by noon. Honestly, it's like you want me to look like a mess for the press. Lucy leaned against the kitchen doorframe, her fingers tracing the sharp, cold edge of the legal envelope tucked into her waistband. The steamer is where it always is, Bella. In the laundry room. where you left it after using it on those curtains you ruined last month." Alina Miller scurried out of the kitchen, carrying a tray of iced tea as if she were a Victorian servant rather than the homeowner. "Now, girls, let's not have any tension today. Bella has a very big day tomorrow." "Lucy, dear, why don't you go get it for her? You're so much faster at these things, and your sister needs to save her energy for the cameras." The familiar sting of her mother's dismissal didn't hurt as much today. It felt more like a confirmation. Alina's eyes were bright with the reflected glow of Bella's imagined fame, completely blind to the fact that the very roof over her head was currently being used as collateral for a massive lie. "I have my own work to finish," Lucy said, her voice a low, steady hum of controlled energy. "Besides, you might want to spend less time steaming and more time reading, Bella. Those contracts Mr. Henderson sent over, the ones you signed without looking, they have some very interesting clauses regarding the unauthorized use of corporate assets." Bella paused, a silver cocktail dress draped over her arm like a dead bird. She let out a sharp, jagged laugh that echoed off the high ceilings. "Oh, please, Mr. Henderson adores me. He knows that corporate assets is just a fancy way of saying I'm the face of the brand. You're just reciting words you don't understand to feel important." She stepped closer, her designer heels clicking aggressively on the floor. "Just because you spend your days fluffing pillows for people who actually have money doesn't mean you know how the world works, Lucy. Tomorrow I'm a star, and you'll still be the help." Lucy didn't flinch. She watched a bead of sweat roll down Bella's temple, marring her perfect foundation. The arrogance was a physical weight in the room, a suffocating heat that her sister mistook for power. "I understand exactly how the world works," Lucy replied. She felt a strange, icy calm. "I understand that once a signature is on a document, the ownership changes. I'm giving you a fair warning, sister. Double-check your status before you step in front of those microphones tomorrow. You might find the ground isn't as solid as you think." "Is that a threat?" Bella sneered, her eyes narrowing as she adjusted a heavy gold bracelet. "It's a courtesy," Lucy said. "One you haven't earned, but I'm giving it anyway. Think of it as a parting gift." Alina sighed, placing a hand on Bella's arm. "Ignore her, honey. She's just projecting her own failures. Why don't we go upstairs and finish the jewelry selection? We need to make sure you sparkle." As they turned to leave, Bella tossed a crumpled receipt toward Lucy's feet. "Make yourself useful and throw that away. And have my breakfast ready by 6. The car arrives at 7, and I won't have you ruining my schedule with your bitterness." Lucy watched them walk away, the sound of their whispers drifting down the stairs. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. A single notification was waiting. A confirmation from the titanium shield lead. Tactical team briefed. "Perimeter control established for 0800. The party is over." Lucy didn't throw the receipt away. She smoothed it out, seeing the charge for a $5,000 watch her sister had bought on a credit card that was about to be frozen. She looked at the clock. The sun was setting on the last day of Bella's gilded delusion. Tomorrow, the world wouldn't see a star. They would see a squatter. She walked to the window, watching the long shadows stretch across the lawn. The silence of the house felt like the indrawn breath before a scream. Lucy took a slow sip of her cold coffee, the bitterness grounding her. Everything was in place. The bait was set, the trap was lubricated, and Bella was currently upstairs picking out the outfit she would be wearing when her entire world collapsed in front of a live audience. One more night. That was all the time left before the hunters arrived. The evening arrived with a sky the color of a fresh bruise, purple and heavy over the manicured hedges of the estate. By 7 o'clock, the driveway was choked with luxury SUVs and sports cars that didn't belong to any of the residents. Bella Miller had spent the last 4 hours screaming at a team of caterers she couldn't afford, her voice carrying through the vents like a jagged blade. Lucy Miller stood in the foyer, her simple navy wrap dress a stark contrast to the explosion of gold and white decor her sister had mandated. She watched as Bella descended the stairs, a shimmering vision in sequins that likely cost more than a year of health insurance. Bella didn't walk. She floated on a cloud of unearned confidence and cloying jasmine perfume. "You're still here," Bella said, stopping on the bottom step to look down at her sister. She didn't wait for an answer, turning instead to a group of 3 influencers who were busy filming the grand staircase. "This is my sister, Lucy. She helps with the housekeeping. Lucy, be a dear and make sure the caterers don't mess up the caviar blinnies. Some of us have reputations to maintain." The influencers giggled, their phones pointed at Lucy like weapons. One of them, a girl with neon pink hair, looked Lucy up and down with a pitying smirk. "Is she the one who does the furniture?" "She tries," Bella laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. "But darling, you can't teach taste. You either have it or you're stuck in the background." Lucy didn't flinch. She felt the weight of the phone in her pocket, a silent anchor. She looked at Bella's neck, where a thin line of sweat was already beginning to ruin the heavy foundation. "The background is where the real work happens, Bella. You'd be surprised what people see from there." Alina Miller appeared from the dining room, draped in a pashmina that Lucy had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. She didn't look at Lucy. Her eyes were fixed on Bella, her face glowing with a frantic, reflected pride. "Bella, darling, the mayor's aide just arrived. Come, you must greet him. Lucy, don't just stand there blocking the flow. Go check the champagne levels." The rage spike hit Lucy then, not as a hot flash, but as a cold, crystalline clarity. Her mother's dismissal was the final sealant on the trap. Alina had spent decades choosing the shiny lie over the steady truth, and tonight she would finally have to live with the consequences of that choice. "I'll get right on that," Lucy said, her voice a calm, dangerous melody. She moved through the crowd, a ghost in her own house. The air was thick with the scent of expensive gin and the frantic energy of people trying to be seen. Every corner of the mansion had been transformed into a photo op. Banners with Bella's face hung over the fireplace, and the custom-made furniture Lucy had meticulously selected for the staging was being used as coasters for sweating cocktails. Near the terrace doors, she spotted Mr. Henderson. He was dressed in a tuxedo that looked 20 years old but was perfectly pressed. He stood near a large floral arrangement, his hands clasped behind his back, looking less like a guest and more like a predator waiting for the right moment. When Lucy caught his eye, he gave a nearly imperceptible nod. The legal machinery was in motion. Lucy stepped out onto the balcony, the cooler air a relief against the humid chaos of the party. She pulled out her phone. A message from the titanium shield lead sat on the screen, all units in position. "Signal jammers ready. We await your word." She looked back through the glass at the stolen kingdom. Bella was standing in the center of the living room, a champagne flute raised high as she held court. She was telling a story about the struggles of acquiring such a historic property, her lies weaving a tapestry of entitlement that the crowd was eagerly devouring. "It wasn't easy." Bella's voice drifted through the open door, amplified by the sheer arrogance of her delivery. "But when you know your worth, the world just opens up for you. This house. It's more than just bricks and mortar. It's a legacy. My legacy." Lucy felt a vibration in her chest, the bass of the music, or perhaps the ticking of a clock only she could hear. She checked the time. 7:52 p.m. In 8 minutes, the party would reach its scheduled peak. Bella was planning to announce her new lifestyle brand from the grand balcony. She wanted the money shot for her live stream, the successful woman overlooking her domain. Lucy walked back inside, weaving through the throng of people who didn't know they were standing on a sinking ship. She passed Alina, who was busy bragging to a local socialite about Bella's visionary approach to real estate. "She's always had an eye for the finer things," Alina was saying, her hand resting on a marble console that Lucy had personally hauled into the house 3 weeks ago. "She just belongs in a place like this, don't you think?" Lucy didn't stop to listen to the answer. She made her way toward the back hallway, the one that led to the integrated smart home hub. She felt the smooth, cold surface of the master keycard in her pocket. It was the only thing that could override the locks Bella had illegally changed. As she reached the door, she felt a hand on her arm. She turned to find Bella standing there, her face flushed with a mixture of alcohol and triumph. "Where are you going?" Bella hissed, her eyes darting around to make sure no one was watching. I told you to stay in the kitchen. You're ruining the aesthetic, Lucy. People are starting to ask why the help is wearing a cocktail dress. I'm just making sure the lights are ready for your big speech, Lucy said. She looked directly into Bella's eyes, seeing the hollow fear buried deep beneath the sequins. You want everyone to see you, don't you? You want this to be a night no one ever forgets. Bella smirked, her grip tightening on Lucy's arm for a second before she let go. Finally, you're making yourself useful. Make sure the spotlights are on the balcony. I want to look like a goddess when I tell them the news. Oh, you'll look exactly like you deserve to look, Lucy replied. Bella turned on her heel, her gold train swishing across the floor like a snake. Lucy watched her go, then stepped into the darkened hallway. She pulled out her phone and typed a single word to the titanium shield lead. Proceed. She leaned against the wall, listening to the roar of the party through the wood. The laughter, the music, the clinking of stolen crystal, it was all reaching a crescendo. Upstairs, she could hear the heavy boots of the security team moving into position on the roof. Outside, the silent black vans would be sliding into place, blocking the exits. Lucy took a deep breath, the scent of the fresh ink on the eviction papers in her mind's eye. The stage was set. The audience was captive. And Bella was about to give the performance of a lifetime. She stepped out of the shadows and began to walk toward the stairs. It was time to join the party. It was time for the queen to meet the real owner of the castle. The scent of expensive lilies and stolen champagne hung heavy in the air as Lucy Miller stepped back into the light of the grand foyer. The roar of the party was a physical weight, the bass of the music vibrating through the soles of her shoes. At the center of the room, standing on the bottom step of the sweeping staircase, Bella Miller held court. She looked every bit the queen of a castle that wasn't hers, her gold dress shimmering under the crystal chandelier. Oh, look, Bella said, her voice amplified by the sudden dip in the music. She didn't need a microphone. Her arrogance acted as a natural conductor. The help has finally decided to join the festivities. Lucy, darling, you're late. I was just telling everyone how lucky you are that I let you stay in the guest wing while you find your feet. A ripple of snickering traveled through the crowd of influencers and socialites. Lucy didn't flinch. She felt the cold weight of the eviction folder in her hand, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the room. She noticed the way Alina, her mother, stood just behind Bella, nodding along with a glass of Lucy's private reserve wine in her hand. Alina caught Lucy's eye and looked away, adjusting her silk shawl with a performative sniff of disapproval. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Bella, Lucy said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it possessed a crystalline clarity that sliced through the murmurs. Bella threw her head back and laughed, a sharp, jagged sound. The only misunderstanding is you thinking you're invited to the after-party. Mom, tell her. Tell her how much work I've put into making this house respectable. Now, Lucy, Alina started, her voice trembling with manufactured frailty. Don't be difficult. Bella is finally making something of herself. You should be supporting your sister, not hovering like a dark cloud over her big night. Lucy took 3 steps forward, entering the circle of light. Behind her, the heavy front doors groaned open. Mr. Henderson stepped in, flanked by the titanium shield lead and 4 uniformed officers. The music died instantly, replaced by the sudden, sharp silence of a room holding its breath. Mr. Henderson, Lucy said, her gaze never leaving her sister's face. Are we ready? Everything is in order, Ms. Miller, the property manager replied, his voice echoing off the marble walls. He held up a thick stack of legal documents. Bella's expression didn't just change, it disintegrated. The smug, curated mask she wore for her followers shattered, leaving behind a frantic, pale mess. Her eyes, usually sharp with calculated malice, darted toward the security team, widening until the whites showed all the way around. Her perfectly lined lips began to quiver, losing their shape as her jaw went slack. A sickly, blotchy red crept up her neck, clashing violently with the metallic gold of her dress. She looked smaller, suddenly, like the air had been sucked out of her ego, leaving only a trembling girl caught in a lie she couldn't outrun. Her chest heaved, a ragged, shallow breath escaping her as she realized the cameras she'd invited were now capturing her total public annihilation. The influencer circle recoiled. A girl in a shimmering silver dress actually stepped back, physically distancing herself from Bella as if her failure were contagious. Elena's hand shook so violently that her wine glass slipped, shattering on the hardwood floor with a sound like a gunshot. The dark red liquid pooled around her designer shoes, looking remarkably like a wound. "What is this?" Bella hissed, though the venom was gone, replaced by a high-pitched desperation. "This is my house. I'm the one who belongs here." "Actually," Lucy said, stepping close enough to smell the cloying vanilla perfume Bella used to mask her anxiety. "You've never belonged here. You're a squatter, Bella, and Mom, you're an accomplice." Lucy pulled the final deed from the folder and held it up. The official gold seal caught the light, blindingly bright. "I didn't just stage this house. I bought it 6 months ago. Every piece of furniture you're sitting on, every drop of wine you're drinking, and the very floor you're standing on belongs to me." The titanium shield lead stepped forward, his shadow falling over Bella. "The premises are being cleared immediately. You have 10 minutes to gather your personal belongings. Anything left behind will be considered abandoned property and disposed of." Lucy leaned in, her voice a cold whisper that only Bella and Elena could hear. "You said I was the help. Well, the help is firing you. Get out of my house." Without waiting for a response, Lucy turned her back on the wreckage of her sister's reputation. She walked toward the door, her heels clicking a steady, rhythmic beat against the marble. Behind her, the room erupted into a chaos of whispers, camera shutters, and Bella's first, panicked sob. Lucy didn't look back. The air outside was crisp and clean, and for the first time in years, it finally felt like she could breathe. The silence of the night air was a sharp, cold blade, but it couldn't drown out the screeching that erupted from inside the house. Lucy Miller stood on the gravel driveway, her back to the grand entrance, listening to the sound of her sister's world splintering into 1,000 jagged pieces. The rhythmic thud of her own heart was steady now, the adrenaline of the reveal settling into a heavy, satisfied weight in her chest. Behind her, the heavy oak doors swung open with a violent bang. "You can't do this." "This is a mistake." Bella Miller's voice hit a pitch that was almost animalistic. She stumbled onto the porch, her designer heels clicking frantically against the stone. Her hair, which had been a perfect blonde curtain only an hour ago, was matted with sweat and disarrayed from her panicked pacing. The titanium shield lead stepped out behind her, his presence an immovable wall of black tactical gear. He didn't speak. He simply pointed toward the driveway, his silent command more terrifying than any shout. Lucy turned slowly, watching as her sister reached the bottom step. Bella Miller's face didn't just fall, it seemed to disintegrate. The carefully applied contouring couldn't hide the way her skin turned a sickly, translucent gray, highlighting the frantic pulse thrumming in her neck. Her eyes, once wide with manufactured innocence, shrank into pinpricks of pure, unadulterated terror as she stared at the gold-embossed seal on the folder Mr. Henderson held. Her mouth hung open, a silent, jagged O that leaked the last of her dignity, while her hands shook so violently that her phone clattered to the driveway, the screen shattering into a spiderweb of glass. "Lucy, tell them," Bella gasped, her voice cracking. "Tell them you're joking. It's a prank for the channel, right? You're just trying to get back at me for the wine." Mr. Henderson stepped forward, the crisp scent of expensive cologne and old paper clinging to him. He opened the leather-bound folio, the white pages gleaming under the porch lights. "The title transfer was finalized 6 months ago, Ms. Miller. The property, the contents, and the liability insurance are all in your sister's name. You have been an unauthorized occupant for 182 days. The crowd of influencers who had been sipping Lucy's vintage champagne moments ago had now spilled out onto the lawn. They weren't offering comfort. Instead, dozens of smartphones were raised, the glowing screens illuminating the scene like a swarm of digital vultures. "Oh my God, did you hear that?" one woman whispered, her voice dripping with malicious glee. She wasn't even the owner, she was squatting in her sister's house. "I'm tagging the brand sponsors," another added, her thumbs flying across the screen. They're going to drop her by morning. The betrayal of the crowd hit like a physical blow. Bella looked around at the faces she had spent years cultivating, seeing only the reflection of her own ruin. Lucy! A new voice joined the fray, shrill and trembling. Elena hurried down the steps, clutching a silk scarf to her throat. Lucy Miller, look at what you're doing to your sister. She has a child. She has a reputation. You're going to give me a stroke, I swear it. My heart, it's fluttering. Elena reached out, trying to grab Lucy's arm with a hand that felt like a cold, damp claw. It was the same tactic she had used for 2 decades. The phantom medical emergency designed to force Lucy into submission. Lucy didn't flinch. She stepped back, letting her mother's hand fall into empty air. If your heart is fluttering, Elena, I suggest you use some of that inheritance money you gave Bella to call a private ambulance, because you aren't staying here tonight either. The mother froze, her eyes widening. You're throwing your own mother out after everything I did for you. You didn't do anything for me, Lucy said, her voice a low, dangerous hum. You spent my father's life insurance on Bella's brand. You let her treat me like a servant in my own home. You watched her pour wine on me tonight and you laughed. I was just trying to keep the peace, Elena wailed, but the audience on the lawn was already turning away, bored by the mother's predictable theatrics. Mr. Henderson signaled to the security team. 2 men moved toward the garage where Bella's luxury SUV sat. The vehicle is also registered to the holding company, he noted coolly. Since the payments were made from the house account, it is being impounded for liquidation. No, Bella shrieked, lunging toward the car. That's my car. My stroller is in there. My life is in there. The titanium shield lead intercepted her with a single, firm arm. You were given 10 minutes. Your time is up. Lucy watched as the realization finally took hold. There was no more gaslighting left to do. No more fake emergencies. No more sisterly favors to exploit. Bella stood in the middle of the gravel, clutching a single designer handbag that was likely the only thing she truly owned. The cold wind whipped her thin dress against her legs, making her look small and pathetic against the backdrop of the mansion she had tried to steal. Where am I supposed to go? Bella whispered, her arrogance finally replaced by a hollow, echoing void. Lucy met her sister's gaze one last time. The smell of the damp earth and the distant sound of a police siren created a symphony of finality. I hear the motel down the street has weekly rates. Maybe they need a stager. Without waiting for the inevitable sob, Lucy turned and walked toward the waiting black sedan Mr. Henderson had arranged. Behind her, the security team began the systematic process of locking the gates. The last thing she heard as the car door closed was the sound of her mother blaming Bella for losing the house, their toxic bond finally consuming itself in the dark. Lucy leaned her head back against the cool leather seat. The house was empty. The secrets were out. And for the first time in her life, the silence was beautiful. 6 months later, the air in the new Miller design showroom smelled of expensive espresso and the crisp, ozone scent of high-end electronics. Lucy Miller stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city pulse below. Her reflection in the glass was different than it had been half a year ago. The exhaustion that had once been etched into her features was gone, replaced by the sharp, focused clarity of a woman who had finally cleared her life of dead weight. She adjusted the cuff of her silk blazer, feeling the cool weight of the watch Mr. Henderson had gifted her to celebrate their most recent closing. It was a far cry from the days of hiding her expertise behind a modest facade to avoid bruising her sister's ego. Now, her name was a brand, synonymous with elite staging and uncompromising professionalism. The soft chime of the showroom door announced a visitor. Mr. Henderson walked in, his tailored suit as sharp as his smile. He held a thick manila envelope, the kind that usually signaled the end of a long legal journey. The final settlement papers, he said, placing the envelope on a polished marble island. The court-ordered liquidation of the estate assets is complete. After the vendors you alerted were paid and the damages to the property were covered, there wasn't much left. Lucy didn't reach for the envelope immediately. She knew what was inside. It was the documented proof of a total collapse. And my sister. Mr. Henderson sighed, leaning against the counter. Bella Miller is currently residing in a 40-unit complex on the outskirts of the city. The influencer career didn't survive the viral footage of her being escorted out by titanium shield. It turns out that brands don't want to be associated with a woman whose primary content became a public eviction and a series of lawsuits for unpaid catering bills. Lucy looked back at the window. She could almost see the face Bella must be making, the wide-eyed, frantic look of a woman who had run out of people to manipulate. Bella had tried to launch a rebrand as a victim of a cold-hearted sister, but the evidence Lucy had meticulously gathered, the recordings of the fake medical emergencies, the receipts of the stolen inheritance, had been leaked to the very forums Bella used to haunt. The internet was a cruel judge, and it had found Bella guilty of the one sin it never forgave, being a fraud. "And my mother?" Lucy asked, her voice steady despite the slight tightening in her chest. "Elena is with her," Mr. Henderson replied quietly. "They're living in that 2-bedroom apartment together. From what the process servers say, it's not a happy home. They spend most of their time arguing over who is more responsible for their current state. Elena still tries to call the office once a week, claiming a new heart condition, but my receptionist has standing orders." Lucy felt a pang of something that wasn't quite regret, but a heavy, lingering sorrow. It was the cost of her victory. She had saved herself, but in doing so, she had been forced to burn the bridge to the only family she had left. She hadn't spoken to her mother since that night at the house. She had sent a single check to cover the first 6 months of their rent, a final act of daughterly duty, with a clear message that there would be no more. The silence of the showroom was beautiful, but it was also absolute. She walked over to the envelope and pulled out a single photograph the private investigator had included in the final report. It showed Bella standing outside a discount grocery store, her designer handbag replaced by a generic plastic tote. Her hair, once perfectly styled for the camera, was flat and dull. Behind her, Elena sat in a rusted sedan, her face a mask of bitter disappointment. There was no joy in seeing them like that, only a profound sense of justice. Bella had always wanted to be seen. Now she was being seen for exactly who she was. She had lived a life of borrowed luxury on Lucy's dime, and now the bill had finally come due. "The new project in the Heights is ready for you," Mr. Henderson said, breaking the silence. "The owners are demanding the Miller touch. They don't care about the cost, they just want the best." Lucy tucked the photograph back into the envelope, hiding the image of her fallen family. She picked up her tablet, the screen glowing with the blueprints of her next success. "I'll be there at 10, she said. As Mr. Henderson left, the heavy glass door clicked shut with a sound of finality. Lucy stood in the center of her showroom, surrounded by the beautiful, expensive things she had earned for herself. She had won. The house was sold, the secrets were out, and the bullies had been humbled by their own arrogance. She looked at her phone. A blocked call notification appeared on the screen, a number she recognized as her mother S. Lucy didn't hesitate. She swiped the notification away, clearing the screen. The silence returned, cold and pristine. She had the life she had always wanted, built on the ruins of the life she had been forced to lead. It was a lonely kind of triumph, but as she walked across the showroom floor, her heels clicking rhythmically against the stone, she knew she wouldn't trade it for anything. The sleeping lion was finally awake, and she was never going back to the shadows.
I hope you enjoyed this tale. Please subscribe to support the channel. Goodbye for now.